What's up, folks?
What you doing, man?
Trying to see if you graded my assignments and you got my grade up so I can play.
No, but I'll try to get them done second period if you want.
Can you get them done before 9?
Put them on my desk though, so I don't forget them.
Oh.
Alright, so today we're going to be graphing equations still. Hopefully you guys are getting pretty good at this by now. At least the graphing part. Today we're going to be graphing though when we don't have a table, so we're going to make the table ourselves. So we're going to graph the function rule, and when it says function rule, that just means equation. Kind of another way to say it. The book really likes that phrase. I don't very much, but Okay, what we're going to do is we are going to graph this by making a table. So, we've got our table here, and what we're going to do is we are going to pick x's to plug in. And you can do whatever x's you want, but I'm only going to, you have to do at least 4. But I'm going to give you the easiest 4 to do. So whenever you make a table, you need at least 4 of them. You can do whatever you want, but you don't want to use like 100 or 200, because that's a pain to graph. So I'm going to give you the easiest ones to plug in. -1, 0, 1, and 2. So we're going to have to pick at least 4 points. Those are the 4 easy. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these x's, and we just made these x's up ourselves. And we're going to plug them into our equation up here, into this x. And when we solve it, we're going to get a y. And after we get our y, we can graph that point on our graph. So I'm going to start with -1. I'm going to plug -1 in here for my x. So I'm going to have -2 times -1. Remember, there's a time between this -2 and the x. And I'm filling x in with -1. And then I have a +1 right there. I've got that at the end. And I need to solve this to come up with my y. So I picked an x and I got -1. I'm going to solve it to find my y. You know, I didn't give you a ton of space, so sorry for that, but I'll try to squeeze our answers in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug this whole thing to Desmos. So I'm going to go -2 times -1 plus 1, straight to Desmos. I'm going to go over here to Desmos, and -2 times -1 plus 1. And I plugged this whole thing in, and I got 3. So when I plug in -1 for x, I get 3 out of it. So my first column, I'm putting in my x's. My middle column is where I'm showing my work. And then this last column, I'm going to put the xy coordinate I'm going to graph. So I had -1 for my x, and then after I plug it in, I got 3 out of it. I'm going to graph this point, after I'm done doing all this other work, I'm going to graph the point -1, 3 on my graph. But before I do that, I'm going to have to plug in all these other ones. So for my next one, this time I'm going to plug in 0 for my x. So I'm going to go -2 times 0 plus 1. And I'm going to plug that into Desmos and see what I get. Let me go back here to Desmos. And Desmos is really nice. Because the only thing that changed from the last thing I plugged in is instead of a -1 right here, we're plugging in a 0, right? So I'm not going to erase this problem. All I'm going to do is erase the -1 and put in a 0. Because Desmos is nice. I don't need to type it in over and over again. I just need to do it for once. Here's the bus now. Just checking, because the bus was late here today.
Yep.
Are you on the bus train?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I better
I woke for my dad.
change your target then.
Yeah. Thank you.
Alright, so I plug in 0 and I get 1. So let me go back here. I got 1 out of it. So my x, y, I put 0 in for my x. I got 1 for my y. I'm going to graph that point once I'm done with my table.
After the lesson. What did you share?
Okay, we're going to keep going through. For my next one, I'm going to plug in the number 1 for x. So I'm going to go -2 times 1 plus 1. And I'm going to plug that into Desmos. And Desmos is nice because I'm going to just delete the 0. And I'm going to type in 1. And when I plug in 1, I get negative 1 for my y. I got negative 1. So I plugged in 1 for my x, I got negative 1 for my y. And then I have one last one, I gotta plug in 2 for my x. I'm gonna go negative 2 times 2 plus 1. Plug this into Desmos, and it's nice because I'm just going to change this 1. I'm going to delete it, type in a 2. And this time, when I plug in my 2, I get negative 3. I get negative 3. So I plugged in 2, I got negative 3. Now I should have done that last one in a different color. Oh. But, I guess I'm going crazy.
You need help? You need some milk?
Maybe. Alright. So, I filled out my table, and now that I've filled out my table, I'm going to graph my 4 points. So I'm going to start with negative 1, 3. And remember, left and right, I got negative x here, and positive x here. I got positive y up top, negative y on bottom. And remember, it's always x comma y. So negative 1, 3. Since negative's over here on the left, I'm going to left 1. Y is positive, so I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3. Put my dot there. I have 0, 1 for my next one. So I'm going to start in the middle. And because x is 0, I'm not going to go left or right at all. I'm going to stay in the middle. And then y is 1, so I'm going up 1. So whenever it's 0, you don't move at all. Either left or right or up or down. So 0, 1 means I didn't move at all, left or right, but then I went up 1. My next one, I have 1, negative 1. X is positive, so I'm going this way, 1. And then y is negative, so I'm going down 1. And I'm going to put my dot right there. And then my last one, I'm going 2, negative 3. So start in the middle. I'm going right, 1, 2. Y is negative, so I'm going down 1, 2, 3. My dot right there. And I'm almost done. What am I missing, Keith?
You do the line thing?
Yeah.
And the arrow thing.
Yeah. Because we are graphing lines, we're not just graphing dots. Because we're graphing lines, so I gotta connect my dots, put my arrows on. And after we finish that off, we're done. We're actually gonna skip, don't worry about this piece down here. Just skip that part, we're not gonna worry about that. So today is all about making our table and then graphing it. So that's what we're going to be working on today. Making the table and then graphing it. So we're going to do one more, and then you guys are probably going to do one, and that'll be just about it.
I'll be taking today's lesson.
Yeah. Can't wait to learn from lesson. We've got to let you go at the same time. Nice to me, don't sass me. Alright. So we are going to graph y equals 1/2 x minus 1. So just like before, I need 4 x's. And you can pick whatever x's you want, but you need at least 4. But I recommend doing negative 1, 0, 1, and 2, because those are the easiest ones. You can do different ones if you want. I won't make you stick with certain x's, but those are the easy ones. So you may as well do the easy ones. And just like last time, I'm going to plug in negative 1 for my x, and I'm going to solve it to get my y. So I've got 1/2 times negative 1 minus 1, and I'm kind of squeeze it in there a little bit, I'm afraid. We'll manage. And then I'm going to plug it into Desmos. 1/2 times negative 1, and then that's a minus 1 right here, I swear. That's a minus 1. 1/2 times negative 1 minus 1. I'm going to go in here to Desmos, and I'm going to go 1/2, and then make sure, you see my cursor blinking here on the 2, make sure you click over here to the right, so it's not down by the 2. And then times negative 1, and then minus 1. And I get negative 1.5. So I got, oh, I'm out of space, so I'm just going to do it right here. Negative 1.5, and I plug that in. So my xy coordinate, I plugged in negative 1, I got negative 1.5. So I'm going to graph that here in a minute after I'm done with my table. Alright, next one, we're going to plug in 0 for our x. So I'm going to go 1/2 times 0 minus 1. Plug that into Desmos. And because these are almost exactly the same, I'm just going to delete negative 1, put in my 0. Makes it easy. And I got negative 1. So I get negative 1. So when I plug in 0, I got negative 1 out of it. So I'm going to graph 0, negative 1 here a little bit. And we're going to keep going. Next, I'm going to plug in 1. So 1/2 times 1 minus 1 is what I'm going to plug into Desmos. Go back into Desmos, change it around. As you guys do these, you'll kind of get pretty good at them here. Because it's basically the same process every time, you're just changing a single number or something. Hey Keith, I'll take that phone.
Huh?
Snapchat your math work. Nerd. Alright, I plugged in 1 for my x, and then I got negative 0.5 for my y. Snapchat your pencil on your paper. You're holding up so I can see it even all the way from the back. Come on, man.
I wasn't.
That's where, man. Go back after class as long as you get 2 minutes.
Alright, go drop it.
I'll try not to.
What would you up?
Alright. So we got one more line on our table there that we gotta plug into Desmos. So I'm gonna plug in 2 this time.
Mr. Goldie, Mr. Goldie. How come we do so much notes?
So you can go back and look at it.
No, I really need to go to the bathroom.
No, I'm just
Be a big boy,
Richie.
Alright, we're gonna plug in 2. I got minus 1. Plug it into Desmos. This time plug it into number 2. Outside. Plug in 2. When I get 0.
Ow.
Alright. Plug in 2. I got 0. Now I can graph them all. Alright. So I'm going to plug in negative 1, negative 1.5. And because I got this decimal in here, I'm just going to kind of estimate where it's at. So, alright, I got negative x over here, positive x. I got positive y up top, negative y down here. Alright. So negative 1 for my x, left 1. Negative 1.5 for my y. So I'm going to go down 1. And then a half is going to be like right in the middle right here. Where your dot is doesn't have to be perfect, as long as it's close. Good enough. You're graphing by hand, so it's hard to get these perfect. Alright, then I'm going to graph 0, negative 1. I'm going to go left and right 0. And then my y is negative 1, so I'm going down 1. About right there. Well, it is right there. Next I have 1, negative 0.5. X is positive, so I'm going right 1. Then negative 0.5 is down right in the middle right there. And my last one is 2, 0. I'm going to go right 1, 2, and then because y is 0, I'm not going to change, I'm not going to go up or down at all. I'm just going to put my dot. So, positive 2 for my x, right 2, put my dot. That's good. And then last step is connect your dots. Maybe do, that's an okay line for me, I guess. It's not bad. Connect your dots, make your arrows. That's it. And then, like last time, don't worry about the M and the D part. We'll talk about this later. We've already talked about it before, so we'll talk about it.
That line's so good.
I could. It's a crappy ruler, but I could do it. All right, let's have you guys help me out with this. All right, Richie, what's the first X we're gonna plug in?
1, 0.
Huh?
Well, let's pick one. What's the first X we're gonna plug in, Richie?
Jesus.
Dude, Mr. Goldie, I really gotta go back. It's
Like,
an emergency.
No, you don't.
Like
I
30
need
in
to
a
go
row.
to the bathroom.
There's like 3 people in a row. You better be patient.
Yeah,
You better hurry up and tell me a number, Richie, because the sooner you talk to me,
One.
the sooner we're done. Alright, we're gonna plug in 1. The order you do these don't really matter a whole lot, but... Alright, and so when I plug in 1, Richie, what's it gonna look like when I actually plug in the number? So I'm gonna have 2 and then finish it off.
2x.
But what am I plugging in for x?
Oh, 1. So times 1.
Yep, 2 times 1.
And then plus 2.
Yep, and then plus 2. And Allison, when we plug this into Desmos, what do we get?
I got you. 4.
4. So I plugged in 1 for my x, and I got 4 for my y. Alright, we're gonna keep going. Susie, what's my next x I'm gonna do? Or we are going to do.
2.
Okay. So when I plug in 2, Susie, what's this middle part look like?
2 times 2 plus 2.
Okay. And Trayton, what do I get when I plug 2 times 2 plus 2 into Desmos?
6.
Yep.
Oh.
So I have 2, 6 in here. Alright. Quana, what's my next x? We're going to plug in. And these don't have to be in order. If you want to do something smaller than 1 or 2, you can. Hint, hint.
2.
You can plug in whatever you want though. Alright, you can do 3. You can do 3, I guess. And what's it going to look like when I plug it in for my middle pulse here? Like, just tell me what the numbers will be. Kind of like this.
Ow!
So like 2 times, we're plugging 3 in for x, right?
Oh,
So 2 times 3, and then plus 2. Alright. Alex, what do I get when I plug 2 times 3 plus 2 into my Desmos? What do I get when I plug this part into Desmos? Yep. We get 8. So I plugged in 3 and I got 8. Alright. For our next one, Jared, what's my last x we're going to do?
4.
Alright. You guys are doing harder numbers than I told you, but alright, I guess.
Harder number.
0 and negative 1 are easier than 3 or 4, but I guess we want to do 3 or 4. And what's it going to look like for this middle part, Jared, when I fill in my x?
2 times 4 plus 2.
Yep. 4 plus 2. Kyle, what do we get when we plug that into Desmos?
Sheow!
You okay up there, Keith?
Huh?
You okay up there, man?
No, he's not.
Start with a YU.
Kyle? I think you actually did plus 3 instead of plus 2.
10.
There you go, 10. So I plugged in 4 for my x, and then I got 10 out of it. Alright, we have done all of that for our table, but we need to go through and graph it. We're going to have some of you guys are going to graph it now, so let me see. I got plus y, plus x, minus y, minus x. So Sophia, why don't you graph this first point for us?
Mr. Goldstein, when did I go back in, bro?
You better hope we're done with this soon.
I'm getting cold.
Alright, Sophia's going to graph this first point, the green one for us. 0.14. One, 2, 3, there you go.
What? I want to graph them then.
Alright, Zoe, do our next point. So Zoe, do the point 2, 6. Very nice. Make it up. There you go. Alright, Dylan, do our next point. 3, 8.
What?
Graph the point 3, 8.
3.
It's upside down now. It's gonna look really weird if you try to use that. Alright. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. we go. All right, Robert, do our last point. Yeah, to Robert, please. All right, Robert's gonna do 410. Maybe? I don't know. I'm freaking out there with that thing.
Dude.
It's going all over the place.
I'm shaking hands.
Alright, there's. Come on, you got this. I believe in you. There's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, right there. That's nice thought, Robert. Alright, Joycelyn. We're missing one piece. Put it in our last part. The very last thing we do after we make our dots.
You enjoy that.
Alright. What's our last thing, Joycelyn?
Like a line.
Yep, we gotta do our line and our arrows. So you get the fun one. And then your arrows. It's an okay line.
Yeah.
A little saggy in the middle. Well, that's okay. We'll take it. Nice job. Alright. Alright, you guys are doing pretty good at this. So, do you want to do an in-class problem or are you ready for your exit ticket?
Exit ticket.
Either way.
I already said in-class problem, so.
Alright, so do your exit ticket. You will answer in Socrative, but what you're going to do in Socrative is you will put in this column right here. And I'll give you a hint for Socrative. It asks you to use -1, 0, 1, and 2 for your x's. So, on this, finish your table, and then the exit ticket says plug in the parts of your table. So, use the x's I give up here though, because that's what it's going to ask in Socrative.
Go through kind of.
Yeah, go ahead.